Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I have a quick and easy repeatable holiday card. I'm using the embellished ornament set by Stampin' Up! And the matching delicate ornament dies. You can see that the dies don't exactly match up with the stamps, so you can have something different. It also comes with an additional ornament in the die set. And then of course you have the outlines that you can cut the ornaments with. So I'm going to start by putting the wide ornament on an acrylic block, and you want one that's going to come right up to the edge. Now this one I can't see through, at the top, so I'm going to have to use my Stamp-A-Jig to get it right, because if you look at the rubber, it's not exactly centered on the rubber, and I want to make sure that my ornament is straight up. So I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Jig. I'm going to prepare it here with some Tempting Turquoise ink. So I'm just going to ink it up and use my block in the upper left-hand corner of my plastic sheet and stamp it right there in the corner. And that way I know exactly where it's going to stamp on my paper when I do it again on the cardstock. So I'm going to move it off to the side here while I ink up my stamp. I've got my Tempting Turquoise. I'm just going to re-ink it with that Tempting Turquoise. And then I'm going to take another color. It's Pacific Point. So this is just kind of a darker blue color. And I'm going to do the rock and roll technique, and that's why I wanted my stamp to be right up to the edge of my acrylic block. So I'm just going to roll it around from top all the way around back up to the top. You just want to kind of hit the edge maybe like 1/4 of the way in toward the center of the stamp. And then when you stamp it, you see that you'll get that dark, pretty Pacific Point on the outside blended in with the Tempting Turquoise in the middle. I've already stamped and cut a post-it with this first ornament so that I can mask it and put the second ornament behind it. I'm going to do the same exact thing, so I'm going to ink this up with some Tempting Turquoise. And I put it on the bottom of the block because the top of this ornament doesn't matter as much, because I'm going to be covering it with kind of a silver topper that comes in the die set. So I'm going to roll this around again. And then I'm going to stamp it right next to, or I'm sorry, behind this ornament. And you want to make sure that you put quite a bit of pressure on the stamp, because you want to make sure you get as close to that ornament as possible. You have that post-it in the way, so you want to make sure that you really press down hard to get into your cardstock. I'm using Stampin' Up! Cardstock, by the way, because Stampin' Up! Inks really work well with the Stampin' Up! Cardstock. You can see how pretty this looks, and it's so simple to do. Now somehow I got ink smudged on there. I seem to do this a lot. So I have my sanding block handy, and what I'm going to do is just sand this paper. You want to do it pretty lightly, and you want to cover a pretty wide area beyond just your smudge mark. And if you just keep at it, you'll get a little dusting of your paper that you won't be able to tell, but most of it will come off. I'm going to put some leaves there anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Now I did leave this part in really quickly. I wanted to show you I cleaned up my stamp with just a few wipes of my absorber. You can see that the Stampin' Up! Ink comes right off and does not stain your stamps. It's one of the benefits of the Stampin' Up! Inks. Alright, moving on to my leaves, I have Wild Wasabi and Garden Green, and I'm not really going to roll my stamp. I'm going to just sort of tap it with a darker color. So I've got my leaves on my acrylic block. I'm going to ink the whole thing up with some Wild Wasabi. And I'm going to kind of look to see where my leaves are, and I'm going to tap it here and there into my Garden Green, which is just a darker green color. And I just want some variety of color on this stamp. It really doesn't matter where it is. Like it is with the ornaments, you want to kind of make them look dimensional, so you want the dark on the edge. But here, it didn't really matter that much. So I'm going to quickly run through this. You could see that I've stamped it, well, and I got some smudge mark too. I had to get my sanding block back out, but I just randomly stamped these leaves around the ornaments just on the left-hand side. You can see how pretty these two shades look together. Okay, so for the inside, I cut another piece of Stampin' Up! Cardstock, 4 by 5 1/4, so 1/8 of an inch matte all the way around. This is going to be the piece that goes on the inside of my card, so I'm just going to add a little bit of greenery to the upper left-hand corner using that same technique with the two inks. Next, I'm going to die cut those silver toppers, so I'm going to use the die from the set. I have this Coordinations shimmer paper. It's actually adhesive, so you could pull the backing off the back, but it doesn't stick very well, so I'm still going to use some adhesive. I've got glue dots. I'm just going to put a glue dot on the bottom part of this topper, and I'm going to leave the top part sort of hanging off. If you touch your die cut directly to the glue dot on the roll, it'll stick to it, so it's really handy to do it that way. Anyway, so I'm going to do this on both sides, and I have the top hanging off so that I can thread it. But before I do that, I'm gonna stamp my sentiment, and because I can't see through it, I'm gonna use my Stamp-A-Majig again. I'm just gonna put it in the lower right-hand corner, and I'm using some Hero Arts black ink because it's dye and it won't smudge, since I seem to be having issues with that on this card. All right, so I have my ATG tape runner. I'm gonna put it on the top. That's what I'm gonna wrap my string around, and it's gonna stick in the back. I have this DMC silver thread. It's a really beautiful, thin, fine silver thread. I used it on a Christmas card a couple years ago. You do have to be careful with it because it does fray easily. That's the only thing I don't like about it. You can see I had to pull this up with a paper piercer because it's adhesive. Even though it doesn't stick very well, it seems to be sticking pretty well now. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread the top of both of these ornaments. And then once I get that set up, I'm just going to wrap the string around the back and just press it down into my tape runner that I already put down on the back of the card. I'm just going to make it look like a pretty loop. And you're going to barely be able to see this, but on camera you can't see it at all, I don't think. But when the recipient gets it, you're going to need a little bit of string up there. So I'm just going to quickly remove the excess on the back with a scissor. And then I'm going to take this and put some ATG tape runner on the back. And I'm also going to run across that thread one more time to make sure it doesn't come undone. I have a piece of Stampin' Up! Cardstock that I've cut to an A2 size and folded it. And that way I get a black mat. And I normally use those Hero Arts black note cards, but I wanted there to also be a black mat on the inside. Remember, I stamped that inside piece earlier with the greenery. So I'm going to put some tape runner on that, and I'm going to adhere that to the inside. And that way I get a pretty nice matted look on the inside as well. And that completes the card for today. So quick and easy, something that you can make a number of in an assembly line format, and it would go pretty quickly. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.